three methods to store the data and retrieve the data, right? So in our topic, storing data in Android applications, right? There are three methods we have already discussed. Okay, one is shared preference, another one is the internal storage, next one is the external storage, right? And we have discussed in which situation you should go for which one, right? Today we are going to see very important topic, that is Android SQLite database, right? So if you want to store your data in a particular SQLite database, and if you want to modify, if you want to create a CRUD application, right? That is create, read, update, and delete the data. These kind of operations, if you want to perform, then you should go for the SQLite database. Okay. So Android provides a full support for SQLite database. Okay. And any database you create will be accessible by the name. Okay. So you have already studied the SQL queries in your database subject. So there is no difficulty for us in this particular topic. It is very easy, right? So here you need to create one database. Into that you have to create one table. And as we know that we need to insert a record, right? And that record will be inserted row wise. Okay. So here you can create the particular database and it will be accessible by the name to any class in the application, right? But not outside the application. So you can see that this particular database resides within the application. Any other application cannot access it. The recommended method to create a new SQLite database is to create a subclass of SQLite open helper. So this is very important thing, right? So you have to extend this, you have to use this particular SQLite open helper, and you have to override the on create method in which you can execute the particular SQL commands to create tables in the database. Okay. So this thing you have to remember. This particular class is a very useful class for us. And this particular class you have to remember whenever you are dealing with the SQLite database. Now, in this class, this particular two methods available for us. One is for writing and another one is for reading from the database. So get writable database and get readable database. So whenever you want to write the data, then you have to use get writable database. And whenever you want to read the data, then you have to use this get readable database, right? Respectively. And this both returns a SQLite database object, and that represents the database and provides the method for SQLite operation. So these two important methods you need to remember if you want to read and write data from the database. Okay. Now you can execute SQL queries using SQLite database query method, which accepts the various query parameters such as table name, projection, selections, columns, grouping, and other parameters it can accept, right? For complex queries such as those that require column aliases, so you should use SQLite query builder, right? So most commonly we are using this SQLite database query, but you can also use this SQLite query builder whenever you go for column aliases, right? And that provides very convenient methods for building queries. Okay, now again, one important class we have that is known as the cursor class, right? So every SQLite query will return a cursor, and that points to all the rows found by the query. Cursor has a very important role over here. So it always the mechanism which you can navigate results from database query and reads rows and columns, right? So with the use of cursor object, you can read that particular data row wise or column wise, right? So first is you have to remember SQLite open helper class. in which you have to override the onCreate method. Second one, you have to remember two important methods. One is a get writable database and get readable database to perform read and write operations. And the next one, you have to use SQLite database query for executing a query, and that will return the data in the form of cursor. And with the use of cursor, you can read and write the data. Are we clear with this? Right? So these are the particular important classes and methods you have to remember whenever you go for the database class. Right? Now let's execute one program that will perform the CRUD operation for us. Right? So CRUD operation means create, read, update, and delete. Right? So let's see how you can perform these operations with the use of SQLite. Okay, so here I'm opening the application. Okay, so whenever you are going to deal with the SQLite database, just a minute. Okay, am I audible, everyone? Hello.
Yes.
Okay, okay. So here in this particular program, what we are going to do, we are going to create one database. In that, here we are providing the name of that database as a student DB. Okay. In that, we are going to create one table. So here, one table is there, that is a student table. Okay. And here, database version, this is important thing you need to remember, right? So by default, you have to keep it as a 1, right? But whenever I was executing this code, I need to modify that database, right? So whenever you modify the database, you make some changes into the database, right? Whether is it a name or some column name you are changing, right? So at that time, you have to compulsory create a version, right? So it's updated version I have used as a 2, right? So second time I have modified, one time I have modified the database. So this number you have to keep in mind, versioning, right? So whenever it keeps you update, whenever your database is there, so it keeps you with the updated version of the database. So here we have one database, that is student DB. We have one table name, that is student. And in that, I have created 3 columns, right? One is the ID, second one is the name, and third one is the email address, right? So here, 3 columns we have: ID, name, and email address. So 3 phase of our database is clear. We have a database, we have a database table name, and we have 3 columns. Now we can perform the CRUD operation. So first of all, here we need to create the particular table into the database. So before that, we need to our database. We need to tell our system, this is my database name, this is my version name, right? So how you can do that? So first of all, you can go for database helper context. So this is our class constructor. Our class is database helper. So we are creating one constructor and we are passing context as a parameter, right? And we are passing context, database name. Then this is the second factor, that is null. And third one is the particular, you can say, database. So you here, you can see this is our database SQLite open helper constructor. We are overriding it, right? So what are the parameters we need to pass? So first parameter is context. Second one is the name. Third one is the cursor. So right now we don't need the cursor over here. That's why I have put the null. And last one is the integer version. So that is our database version name, right? So these parameters you need to pass here. So as I told you that you have to extend the SQLite open helper. Don't forget to do this, right? Now we have created a constructor and we have passed the parameters. Now we need to override the onCreate method. So whenever onCreate method is called, at the same time our table is going to be created, right? So what is the query for creating a table? So it is very well known to you guys, right? So it is the same as whenever you are working with the SQL in a database. So here we are using our execute SQL command, execute SQL method, right? And here we are writing a query, create table. Then you have to put the table name and three fields we need to create: ID, name, and email. So here ID, integer, we are providing it as a primary key, then name as a text and email as a text. Okay. So whenever our onCreate method is going to be created, called, then our table with the name student is going to be created. Okay. Now these two methods of SQLite open helper is compulsory on create and on upgrade. So whenever you are extending that, so at the same time, there will be a red line in that, and if you click on that red bubble, then it will ask you for the override methods. So here on create and on upgrade will be created automatically. Now in on upgrade method, what we are doing? In on upgrade, if the table is already exists, okay, we are dropping the table if exists table name. So if table is already exists, then we are dropping it, right? We are not going to do that. We are not going to create same table name with the same again. So here for that, execute SQL query is going to be used. Okay, so on create and on upgrade. Now these two function for inserting and getting data, for adding a data, for reading a data, then update the data and delete the data, right? Now four functions we are going to perform CRUD operations. Okay, so before that we are going to create that particular you can say insert function. So now here what we are going to do, so here in an insert function, okay, so this is our designing. It's a very simple design. We are going to create ID, name, and email ID, three text boxes, edit text. Then we are going to create buttons, add, view, update, delete, and clear data. So these are the functions we are going to perform. So XML is very easy, guys. Now onwards, you are going to understand the designing of this particular UI. So I'm not going to discuss about the design of these particular views. Okay. So here you need to take 3 edit text and 5 buttons. Okay. Now here, what you need to do, that first of all, you need to remember that all the views, you need to find view by IDs. So it is very easy. Edit text, 3 text, buttons, 5 buttons we have, right? And database helper, we are going to access some fields of this particular class. We are going to call from main activity. So we need to create that object database helper. Okay. Now we are going to find view by ID with all these, and then we are going to call functions. Okay. So this is very important. Add data, read data, update data, and delete data, right? So whenever I click on the add data button, then my insert data function is going to be called, right? Which is the function of my database helper class. Here, this is my database helper class, and here is the insert data function. So from here, whenever I click on this particular add data button, so here button add dot set on click listener, I have set the on click listener on this button, on click view. Okay, now what I'm going to do that I'm going to insert the data. So for inserting the data over here, right? So two parameters we are passing because our ID is auto generated, right? So in insert data function, what we need to pass? So whatever we are going to add in a edit text. So et underscore name get text dot toString, comma et underscore email dot get text dot toString. So name and email address we are going to pass as a parameter in insert data function by creating the object of database helper class. It is a simple class terminology. It returns a true, right? So if the data is added, then we are going to display one toast message that data added successfully. If anything happens wrong, then data is not added. That message will be displayed. Now, whenever this particular function is going to be called, that will be redirect to the database helper class over here. Two parameters we have passed, name and email address. Now, our main thing going to start. So SQLite database object you need, reference you need to create, and here you need to use the get writable database because we want to write something. Okay, get writable database. Here we are using content value class. So the content value class is used to store a set of values, right? So here, whatever data values we are going to write, so that will be stored into these content values, and with the use of put method we are passing it. So here in a put method, you have to provide a column name, key, and a value, that is a name. So from this name is passed from here, this email is passed from here. So we are only adding two values because our ID is auto generated. So name and email only we are going to add. Now the next thing is what we are going to do, that these particular values where we need to insert, so into a table name. So we need to provide a table name, the insert method of the SQLite database, okay, and which value? So content values, whatever we stored in these content values, right? We are on simply setting flag over here, result is equals to -1, then false, else is equal to true, right? So this is a very simple insert function. If you write this much logic, then you are able to add the data in SQLite database. Okay, now the next function we are going to call is a read data, right? We are going to call a read data function. So here, whenever I click on a view data button, then I have set on click listener on that and on click. So again, here we are going to use a cursor class, right? Okay, so cursor C is equals to our class object dot get data. So I need to call the get data function of my database helper class. So let's go over there. What that do for us? So here it returns a cursor as we discussed in data again. So get writable data, right? Cursor C is equals to object dot raw query, right? So it's a raw query method we have of this SQLite database. We need to pass a query, select star from table name, for which table, right? So it will fetch all the data from student table for us, right? and return cursor over here. So that will be goes over here, right? So here you need to create one cursor object, cursor variable, right? C dot get count equal to 0, right? So the record not found, then it will show the particular message, right? Here we are going to use a dialog box. Okay, so you can use the dialog box to particular display the data, right? You can also use a list view or a recycler view according to your requirement. Now here we are going to create a string buffer object to store the data. Now C dot move to next. So it's a method of cursor class. Okay, you can see over here that will read the data row by row, right? So C dot get string, it's a column name, column index 0, 1, and 2, and slash n for the next line, right? So it will read our data and it will call this show message function. So here we have used alert dialog box to display our data. So in that two parameters we need to pass, one is the title, another one is the message. So in a title, we are going to pass a record, and in a particular message, we are going to pass this particular, you can say, ID, name, and email address. So how to use a particular alert dialog box? So here we are going to call a function, so message function. This is our function. In that, we are going to use alert dialog dot builder, and we are going to create the object of a builder. And here you need to pass some parameter. You need to set some properties. It is very easy, guys. Set cancel label. So that cancel button will be there. If set title, then title will be set. Set message, message will be set, and show method to display the alert dialog. Okay, so if you write this much, then you are able to read the data. You are able to read the data, right? Now, after performing these two operations, the third operations we have update, right? So let's again call our function update data function, button update, set on click listener. Okay, and here we are going to create a particular update that we are going to call update data method. So ID, name, and email, right? So here, what you are going to update is underscore ID underscore name and it underscore email. So here we are not writing that particular queries that if update this, if city equal to this, then update this. No, we are not going to do that. We are simply updating all the fields as it is, right? You can write a complex logics by according to your requirement for the update queries. But as the demonstration purpose, we are only simply updating the data. Now, whenever our update data function is going to be called from here, so three parameters we have passed. So that will be goes to the database helper class. Here update function is there. We are passing three parameters, ID, name, and email. So again, you need to use get writable database. Again, you are going to use the content values. And right now we are dealing with the three parameters. So column 1, 2, and right. So now you have to update with content values. Okay, where ID is equal to anything, right? And here we are going to use this particular thing. Okay, now on the basis of ID passed over here, we are going to update the data. Now, the last function we have is a delete data function. So delete is very simple function. You just need to delete a record, whatever ID number you are going to provide, right? So here you need to call the delete data function, right? You need to fetch the ID. So based on ID, it will delete the record. Okay. If row greater than 0, then record is deleted and it's record not found, right? If no record is there, then nothing is there to delete. Now, by calling this function, it will go into our database helper. Again, very simple query we have for the delete table name where ID is equals to this. So based on the ID, you are going to delete the record, right? So it is a very simple CRUD operation, guys, for this particular SQL database, right? And it is a very simple function. Now let's see how our application is behaving. Okay, this is our application. I have already added a data into this. So first of all, let's view the data. Okay, so 3 names we have, 3 data we have into this particular. Let's add the particular data over here, 4th one. Okay, so let's add the data. So data is added successfully. Let's view the data. Okay, our ID is auto generated. So you don't need to provide the ID over here, right? Okay, now suppose say for example clear data. Now I want to delete that data. So that data will be on 5th ID number, right? So delete the data, the record is deleted. Okay, 1, 2, and 3. Now I want to change the 3rd data. Okay, so I need to provide the ID over here, 3rd, and into that admin @gset.ac.in, right? And update the data. Record is updated. And if you view the data, then okay, admin @gset.ac.in. So this way, you can create a simple CRUD application, guys. Okay, add, view data, update data, delete data, and clear data, right? So this is very simple application, and you just need to provide this particular logic, right? So again, I'm just revising you to a design like this. Okay, whatever operations you want to, we are going to take 3 edit text, ID, name, and email address. ID will be auto incremented. So you just focus on name and email address for adding the data. Update data will work based on ID, and delete data will work based on ID. That's why I have taken this ID text box. From that, you have to call these 4 functions. You have to set on-click listener onto that, and you have to just create these 4 function: insert, update, and delete. Okay, so that's